Draxus Feeve was a dead-end planet, where broken ships came to rot and unwanted souls came to vanish. The Scrapyard spanned continents, a silent graveyard of forgotten technologies and failed empires. There were no city lights here, only the pulse of scorched metal and the drone of scavenger engines circling like vultures. Dr. Leo Strickland hadn't meant to stop. His medical frigate, Solace 1, was low on supplies and drifting toward its next contract in the outer reach. But a mechanical fault forced him to ground at the Draxus yards, seeking a replacement part deep within the sprawling junk fields. He navigated the uneven terrain alone, boots crunching over warped titanium and glass alloys dulled by decades of neglect. That was when he heard it, soft, rhythmic, scraping. Leo paused, scanning the landscape. The wind hissed through the torn carcass of a freighter half submerged in rust. Beyond it, a trail in the dust, a drag mark. He followed it instinctively, weapon at his side, sensors humming, past a collapsed shuttle wing across a bridge of corroded beams. And then he saw her, crawling. Her arms moved with slow, agonizing determination, dragging the limp weight of her lower body across blistered terrain. Her skin shimmered faintly, a smooth slate purple with a translucent sheen, cracked in places from sun and debris. Her clothing was shredded and stained, pieced together from scavenged thermal wraps. Her legs, paralyzed and bound in makeshift bandages, trailed lifeless behind her like they had long since been abandoned by their own owner. Leo froze. She didn't see him at first. She kept crawling. Each movement was painful, precise, a long breath, a shift of the elbow, a lurch, a pause. When she finally looked up, her eyes glinted like liquid amber, beautiful, alien, and filled with exhaustion too deep for language. She saw him and didn't beg, didn't call out. She just stopped crawling. He stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "I'm human," he said gently. "Doctor, you need help." "No," she rasped. "I need a miracle." Her voice was hollow. No sarcasm, no hope. Leo crouched beside her, assessing her injuries without touching her. Dislocated left hip, fractured knee, nerve trauma running up the spine, infections creeping along old scar lines. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. "Long enough to know I'm not worth the fuel it takes to stop." She turned her face away, trying to keep her dignity in the dirt. Leo took off his satchel and opened a med kit. "Well, lucky for you, I'm terrible at economics." She blinked, and for the first time something flickered through her expression. Confusion, maybe, or disbelief. It was hard to tell. He offered her water. She stared at it, then drank it in 3 desperate swallows. "I'm Leo," he said. She nodded, wiping her mouth. "Sura." That was all she gave him, and all he needed. He carried her, not in his arms. That would have been an insult. But with a field stretcher constructed from scavenged repulsor panels, rigged with shock dampeners, and a modest privacy hood. It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't elegant, but it gave her back some of the control she'd been forced to surrender. The trek to his frigate took 3 hours. Draxus was unforgiving, every step a gamble across unstable heaps of wreckage, but Leo was methodical. He kept his words brief, his hands careful, his pace steady. Sura spoke only once as they crossed a broken bridge of old battlecruiser hulls. "You're wasting time." Leo didn't stop walking. "I've got nothing better to do." She was silent after that. When they finally reached Solace 1, he brought her into the medbay and dimmed the lights. The room was clean, clinical, untouched by the rot of Draxus, a sanctuary hidden inside the ghost of a battlefield. She flinched when he approached with the scanner. He didn't react, just adjusted the wavelength and moved slower. "I'm not going to cut you open," he said. "I've heard that before." "Not from me." She watched him in silence as he ran the scans. Her spine was in worse shape than he expected. Nerve damage from shrapnel, scar tissue grown into bone, multiple surgeries attempted, none finished. Probably abandoned midway. Her people hadn't meant to save her. They'd meant to silence her. Leo administered antibiotics, rebuilt the brace on her left leg, and rehydrated her cells with IV fluid. He didn't ask why she'd been crawling alone through a graveyard of starships, not yet. But as he worked, he noticed the inside of her coat had names scrawled in different languages. Some crossed out, some circled. He pointed. "What's that?" "People I asked for help," she said. "Why are some crossed out?" "They said no." "And the circled ones?" She looked him dead in the eye. "They said nothing." Leo didn't respond. He simply returned to his work. An hour passed. Then 2. When he was done, he brought her a nutrient gel and adjusted the medbed to support her spine. "You're not leaving me here?" she asked. "No," he said. "You're staying." "And tomorrow?" He leaned against the wall, folding his arms. "Tomorrow," he said, "we begin again." Sura looked away, but her hand curled slowly into the edge of the blanket, holding on to something she hadn't dared to believe in for a long time. Safety. Or maybe the beginning of something like hope. Sura awoke to the low hum of the Solace One's medbay, the same constant rhythm she'd heard in the dead corridors of 100 scavenger ships. But here, it didn't haunt her. The air smelled sterile, the sheets beneath her clean. She blinked, the synthetic ceiling above her blurring before it sharpened again. For a moment, she forgot how it felt to sleep without pain grinding into her hips. For a moment, she thought she might still be crawling. Leo's voice reached her before she saw him. "Vitals are improving. You've got a resilient system." She turned her head. He was behind a console, tapping through data projections, his posture relaxed but focused. She noticed he hadn't changed out of his dusty jacket. His hair was a mess, his hands bandaged across the knuckles. "Do you always take in strays?" she asked, her voice dry. He didn't look up, "Only the ones who bite." She almost smiled. Almost. He approached and adjusted the neural harness wrapping her spine. She winced. "The brace isn't just stabilizing your bones anymore. It's talking to your nervous system, rebuilding muscle memory. You'll feel pain in places you forgot existed." "I never forgot. I just stopped screaming." He paused. "You shouldn't have had to." Sura said nothing. The next hour passed in silence as Leo introduced her to the frame, an exo-rig designed for spinal trauma, developed from Union MedTech and salvaged industrial servos. It was crude but adaptable. She tried to shift her legs. Nothing. Her jaw tightened. Leo didn't react. "We'll start with upper body conditioning. Movement through artificial assist first, then response monitoring. Your nerves are damaged, not dead. I've heard that too. Not from me." Later, he wheeled her into the observation deck. The sky above Draxus 5 was a storm of burnt red clouds and faint rings of debris circling in low orbit. She sat motionless, silent. He watched her from the shadows. "You know," she said at last, "they left me there because I was too slow." "Your crew?" "My family, clan leaders, advisors, whatever you want to call them. We were hit during a salvage run. I got caught under debris. They ran. No rescue. Just silence." Leo sat beside her. "They thought you'd die." She looked at him. "I did, just not the way they wanted." The stars outside shimmered in rust-colored halos. "Why save me?" she asked again. "Because you were alive. No one else cared. I'm not everyone else." And this time she didn't respond. But she didn't look away either. The days that followed became a ritual. Sura woke early. Leo adjusted the frame, calibrated the sensors, then helped her through grueling therapy sessions that left her breathless and shaking. She refused painkillers, refused to rest. She pushed herself harder than any soldier Leo had ever treated. Each twitch of her foot was a battle, each flex of her fingers a victory. He logged her progress with quiet reverence. But beyond the clinical, something deeper began to take root. Trust, not given but forged. Leo asked no questions about the scars on her back, or the burn across her hip, or why she sometimes woke from sleep with her hands clenched and jaw trembling. And Sura, for her part, stopped watching him like he was a lie waiting to be revealed. One night, after a particularly brutal session, she collapsed in the rig, exhausted and drenched in sweat. Leo knelt beside her, adjusting the brace. "You need to stop pushing past redline," he said. She scoffed. "I'm not breaking." "You're not unbreakable either." She exhaled sharply. "What do you see when you look at me?" He blinked. "Now? Yes, be honest. I see someone who refuses to die, someone who should have been cared for but wasn't, someone worth the time." She studied him, searching for weakness. She found none. Most people just saw the chair. I see the one climbing out of it. That night, she let herself sleep without binding her arms across her chest. And the next morning, when he asked if she wanted to try walking with the assist rails, she didn't say no. He watched her rise, slow, shaking, furious with herself, and take one step, then another. She didn't fall. He didn't clap. He didn't cheer. He just stood there, steady. And when she looked at him, her eyes burning, her voice cracked with a single word. Again. 3 weeks after Sura first stood with the aid of Leo's frame, she was walking again. Not far, not without pain, but walking. Her steps, assisted by the neural link rig, now fused to her spine like a second skeleton. It hummed with life, whispering its steady support as she crossed the medbay under her own weight. The muscles in her legs spasmed violently with each step, but she bore the agony like armor. Leo stood nearby, pretending to recalibrate a console, though he watched her every move with quiet precision. He had stopped offering encouragement. She didn't need it. She needed space to prove herself. When she finally collapsed onto the rest bench, drenched in sweat and trembling with exhaustion, she didn't speak. Neither did he. He simply handed her a flask of nutrient water and waited. Later that night, they received a long-range transmission. An Ashari vessel had docked at one of the outer scrapyard rings. It bore the markings of her old clan, Orveth. Unmistakable, a salvage company, now a private contractor for mid-sector reclamation. The transmission wasn't meant for her, but Leo intercepted it anyway. He showed it to her. The look on her face was unreadable. "I don't want to see them," she said. "Then we leave." "No," she added after a breath. "I want them to see me first." She suited up the next morning, slower than usual, but with a fire in her spine that outshone the pain. The frame on her back had been redesigned to look more like armor than recovery gear. A statement, not an apology. Leo didn't stop her. He walked with her. They took the auxiliary crawler to the ring outpost, a shell of crumbling docks and half-abandoned merchant stalls. The Orveth ship sat near the center, its cargo bay open, crew busy unloading scavenged power cells. No one noticed them at first. Then one did. A pale-skinned Ashari male, face marked with the insignia of command. Sura's older brother. He froze. The others looked. The whispers began. Sura stood in the center of the yard. Straight-backed, balanced, her prosthetic spine gleaming like tempered steel beneath her coat. "You left me," she said. The words struck with more force than any weapon. Her brother stepped forward, disbelief turning into awkward authority. "Sura, we thought you were..." "Dead?" she cut in. "Broken?" He glanced at the rig on her back. "You're repaired." Leo almost said something, but she raised a hand to stop him. "I'm not repaired. I rebuilt myself. Without you. Without any of you." Another crew member stepped forward, an older woman, once her mentor. "Sura, we were told you wouldn't survive. You didn't wait to find out." Her voice didn't tremble. It was iron through breath. They looked at her and saw not the wreckage of the past, but the vengeance of survival. Her scars were no longer shame, they were truth made visible. "I don't want your guilt," she said. "I want you to live with the fact that I'm stronger without you." And then she turned. Walked back toward the crawler. Each step was jagged, but she never stumbled. That night, Sura didn't return to the medbay. She sat in the engine room instead, cross-legged in front of the old fusion core, her hands resting on her knees. Leo found her there, lit only by the orange glow of cooling rods and diagnostic lights. He didn't speak. He simply sat beside her, letting the silence fill the air between them. Finally, she broke it. "I didn't expect to feel anything." He nodded. "But you did. I thought anger would burn clean, that it would end something, but all it did was show me what's still broken." Leo didn't reply. He knew better than to offer quick comfort. They looked at me like I'd crawled back from the dead, like I wasn't supposed to speak. "You weren't," he said gently. "That's why it mattered that you did." Sura turned her head. "Do you think I scare them?" "I think you should." She leaned back against the wall, exhaling. "I'm tired." "Rest," he said. "I don't mean that kind of tired." He reached into his coat and handed her a tool, an old, worn fusion spanner. "Then build something." She blinked. "What?" "You've spent your whole life crawling toward survival. Maybe it's time to start running toward something instead." Her eyes lingered on the tool. Slowly, deliberately, she gripped it. "I used to dream of flying my own ship," she said. "Not as crew, as captain." Leo smiled. "Then you'll need a second engine. I know where to find one." She stared at him for a moment, then shook her head. "I still don't understand you." "You don't have to," he replied. "You just have to keep walking." And somewhere deep in the belly of the Solace one, beneath the echo of broken pasts and whispered regrets, something shifted in Sura's chest. Not healing, not closure, but the birth of a new direction. Not away from pain, but toward something finally her own. The engine chamber transformed. Where once dust caked every console and grease coated every bolt, now the space thrummed with new purpose. Sura had taken ownership of it, not in title, but through action. Her fingers, once rigid from disuse, now danced across conduits and relays with obsessive precision. She worked late into the ship's artificial night cycles, reprogramming regulators, tearing down panels, reassembling things Leo didn't dare touch. When he walked in one evening to find the fusion coil completely dismantled, he only asked, "Will it still fly?" Sura didn't look up. Eventually, better than before. The project had become her second spine. It pulled her through the aches of recovery, past the trauma stitched into her muscles. When her legs gave out, she dragged herself to the console. When her arms cramped from overuse, she simply switched tools and kept going. Leo, watching from the threshold, understood. She wasn't fixing the ship. She was building her freedom. One night, as she sat in the corner cross-referencing power couplings from a dusty engineering manual, she asked, "Do you think it'll ever feel natural again?" Leo, seated across from her with a tray of protein rations and coffee, raised a brow. "Walking? No. Living." He didn't answer right away. The ship hummed quietly beneath them. "It doesn't have to feel natural," he said at last. "It just has to feel yours." She studied him in the dim light, her face still unreadable. Then she reached for the mug of coffee and took a slow sip. The bitter taste made her grimace, but she didn't stop drinking. Later, as she fit the last component of the auxiliary thruster, she whispered, "If I build something that flies, I want to name it." "Of course," Leo said. "What name?" She didn't hesitate. "Ashwing." He blinked. "Why?" "Because it doesn't matter how much they burn me," she said, fingers tightening around the bolt. "I'll still fly." The Solace 1 had drifted near the ozone belt for 2 weeks by the time the distress call came in, a transport vessel with failing life support and a wounded crew. It was a short-range emergency ping, likely bounced from a salvage relay and ignored by larger traffic. Leo charted a course immediately. "I'll go with you," Sura said, pulling on her brace and utility belt. Leo frowned. "You're still stabilizing." "Exactly," she said. "I need the gravity." The dropship jolted as they breached the atmosphere of the moon, where the signal originated. The terrain below was jagged and uneven, a crash site rimmed by metallic cliffs and the glow of leaking fuel cells. The wreck lay smoking in a shallow crater. A battered crew of 3 were clustered beside it, 2 unconscious, 1 conscious but bleeding from the abdomen. Leo knelt to triage while Sura approached the ship. Her movement was unsteady but deliberate. She moved with the help of her harness, frame linked to the subtle magnetic pull of the surface. The sensation of true planetary gravity struck her bones like old echoes, but she kept walking. One of the injured, a wiry young pilot with ashen skin, blinked at her. His eyes widened. "You're Orveth." Sura stiffened. "Not anymore." The name stung less than it used to. She helped lift him to his feet, her strength coming not from muscle, but from determination wrapped in metal. When he leaned on her, he whispered, "Didn't think anyone would come." "Neither did I," she replied. "But someone did." Back on the Solace 1, as the rescued crew slept and Leo cleaned blood from his gloves, Sura leaned against the observation panel, staring out at the ringed gas giant beyond the moon. "You didn't ask me why I came," she said. Leo, seated beside her, replied, "Didn't have to." "I used to be afraid of gravity," she admitted. "Afraid it would always hold me down. Afraid if I fell, no one would lift me again." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You're not afraid anymore?" She shook her head. "No, now I know what I'm made of." And Leo, watching the determination settle into her face like morning sunlight on fractured glass, understood she wasn't speaking in metaphors. She meant it. She had crawled through rust and ruin, had been buried in abandonment and told by her own blood that her body made her worthless. But now she walked. And gravity wasn't her enemy. It was the proof she had risen against it. They arrived in the dark, as the Solace 1 orbited a mining colony in the forgotten rim of Sector Varn. The crawlers, black flag scavengers who operated between the seams of war and bureaucracy, sent no warning. Just a ripple through the comms, then weapons fire across the hull. The colony sent a panicked distress signal, too weak to reach the core systems, too late for anyone else to respond. But Leo and Sura were already there. The blast threw her from her bunk. She landed hard, but the exoframe caught her fall. The ship trembled as it turned to engage evasive maneuvers, Leo's voice crackling through the internal speakers. "Sura, we've got uninvited guests. Mid-hull breach in Quadrant 3. Shields holding? Not for long. She was already moving, strapping on her harness, the frame sinking to her spinal nodes like armor sliding into place. She activated the override on the blast doors, ignoring the pain screaming through her legs. It didn't matter. She had stopped waiting for comfort. Now she moved because someone needed her to. She found Leo in the emergency corridor, weapon in hand, face smeared with smoke and grit. He looked up, surprised, only for a second. "You should be in medbay. You should have installed better locks," she snapped. The ship jolted again. A pipe burst above them. Steam flooded the corridor. Leo tossed her a sidearm. "They'll try to board through the rear docking ring." Sura caught the weapon in one hand, balanced herself with the other. "Then we make sure they regret it." The fight in the corridor was brutal. The crawlers weren't military, but they were desperate, and desperation makes a blade sharp. The first wave hit like a swarm, cloaked in scrap armor, brandishing pulse tools and cutting drills. Leo covered her flank. Sura advanced without hesitation. Her frame took the brunt of the assault, deflecting blasts meant to cripple. She moved like a shadow that had learned to stand. Her shots were precise, her stance immovable. When one of the crawlers rushed her with a plasma cleaver, she spun and slammed her elbow into his jaw. He dropped. Leo cleared the last breach point. "That's the last of them." Blood dripped down his arm. "Your shit," she said. He looked at her and smiled, teeth red. "You should see the other guy." She stepped closer, propping him up with one arm. "You've bled on my engine. That's unforgivable. You built it to survive worse. I built it to carry people like us." As alarms faded into silence, the Solace One stabilized, limping through the void, but intact. They didn't speak again until the airlock was sealed and the wounded tended. In the quiet of the observation deck, Leo finally asked, "When you were crawling through that scrapyard, did you think it would end like this?" Sura stared at the stars. "I didn't think it would end at all." Weeks passed. Repairs were made. The scars of the assault etched into the ship's outer plating became part of its story. They added new protocols, reinforced the hull. But inside the Solace One, something else had been rebuilt. Trust, and something deeper still. Sura stood unaided now, for minutes at a time. She moved slowly, sometimes with pain, but always forward. The exoframe was no longer a cage, it was her wings. She stood at the launch bay beside Leo, where a small shuttle, the Ashwing, now rested, newly finished. A product of her hands, her vision. Something that flew because she had refused not to. "I want to take her out," she said. "You've earned it." "I don't want to go alone." Leo raised a brow. "I'm not a great co-pilot." "You're not coming as a co-pilot." He blinked. "Then what?" Sura turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable at first, until the corner of her mouth tilted. "You're coming as mine." He stared at her. "I thought you didn't believe in that kind of thing," he said softly. "I didn't, until someone saw me as something more than the thing that couldn't walk." Leo stepped closer. "I never saw anything broken." "I know," she whispered. "That's why you're the only one I'll let fly beside me." He took her hand, not with pity, not with hesitation, but with the quiet certainty of a man who had seen the worst of someone and loved them all the more for it. They boarded the Ashwing together. As the hangar doors opened and the stars stretched beyond them, Sura gripped the controls. Her hands were steady, her gaze fixed. "Ready?" Leo asked. "No," she said. Then she smiled. "But I'm going anyway." The shuttle rose, and together they flew, not away from ruin, but toward a horizon they had built with fire, bone knot, and the unbreakable will of two people who never should have survived, but did. Not because someone saved them, but because they saved each other.